Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A CloudFoundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
The topic which I am going to cover is known as FHIR Maturity Model. We will talk about what is FHIR Maturity Model, and it starts with FMM. The short form is FMM. Over here, if you see in the first released version, they just listed down the resources and you don't see any number listed next to a resource. Do you see a number listed next to a resource where I am hovering? First version, it is not there. Now let's look into the DST1, DST2. If you go to DST2, you might find, let's say there are in R1, I don't know how many resources are there. Let's say there are X resources in R2, which is a DST2 version. There are X plus 1, or it can be X resources only. Also, there is some number added on top of it. Whether that number is 0, number is 1. Some number goes to 3 directly from one version to another. How is this number moving from one placeholder to the other placeholder, and what this number actually means? Those are the maturity numbers. Those are the maturity numbers, and it will start from maturity numbers, can start from 0, and it holds values like this, and these are the limited set of values. What can be allocated to a resource? It is not for a FHIR version. It is for a resource, and even they give this number to the pages as well. Now coming back to what is this number. If you see, in the first version there were no numbers. In the second version they have given couple of numbers, and this is R4. Sorry, I will go to ST2. There are a couple of resources which are at 1, couple of 0, couple of 2, couple of at 3, and then we look into the R4 version. I can see some at N also, some at 3, some at 2. These are the maturity of the resources. What is the maturity? Just like how we grow old, our age increases with the usage. When I say usage, it is the usage of the resource in the actual implementation, and there are successful implementation done using those resources. Then what FHIR does is FHIR will increment plus 1 to that number. For example, in the DSTU1 it is 0. You can consider if it is nothing, it is 0. Then if it is successful in some of the implementation, it will increment by 1. Then plus 1 based on some criteria. And what are those criteria? Those are theoretical stuff. Now talking about what is that FHIR maturity model. What is number 0? It says these are theoretical part now. The theoretical part says the artifact has been published on the current build. Artifact with this level must have a standard status of draft. Now, considering this all to be 0, how this can be moved to 1? Considering the resource DST1, how do you think allergy intolerance got this number 1? What they say is considering what was there in FM0, that the resource has been part of current build. There were no errors produced as a part of the current build. Plus, the responsible WUG is The work group has indicated that they consider the artifact substantially complete. When this is substantially complete, it is that the specification has a list of enhanced attributes which can be used in the implementation and ready for implementation for resources profiles and implementation guide. The FHIR management group has approved underlying resources. Now how it will get to the FMM2? What is there in FM1 plus this concept? How it will go to FM3? FM2 plus this concept? It is again theoretical part. You just need to know what is FFM, what that number means. Now we will talk about what is all of these models, maturity models over here. What it says is if a resource, let's talk about a resource. I will just say a resource which is at level 0. What is going to happen? Let's say you pick this resource which is at level 0. And now the FHIR version or the new release has happened. When the new release will happen, let's say they moved it to number 1. What all changes you can expect? What FHIR says is attributes can be deleted. New attributes can be added. We'll talk about properties of the attribute. I will talk about properties of the attribute. You just understand there are properties which are associated to the attribute. We will talk about what are the properties. Properties of the attributes can be tweaked. Even the data type data, just like we learned in HL7v2, each field or component or a subcomponent has a data type. Data type of the attribute. What is the name of the attribute? The name of the attribute. The attribute can be changed. All of these things you can expect, but FHIR does not say you stop using the resource which is at level 0, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. What is this? N is normative. That is the abbreviation for N. Now, what is this N meaning? N means now the resource is stable. And this does not mean that you should wait for a resource to be stable and then you can use it. Can a resource which is normative can undergo a change? Answer is definitely yes. What all changes you can expect for a resource? Let's say there is a resource A which is now marked as normative. What all things you can expect? Now we will showcase a specification. You will understand better. We'll open a patient resource. We will learn how to read a specification, but just to understand what is normative. Patient resource is normative in R4. What it means is whatever attributes flags, this is the properties which I was talking about. Cardinality data type. Some description is released as a part of R4. And the resource is marked as N. You will, if the R5 comes, you will again find all of these attributes listed as a part of R5. What can change? Only thing which can change is a new attribute can be added at the last, which will not impact your backward compatibility implementation. For example, if you have to move to R5, you can still with the same code in the shape and form, you can move to R5. Only thing is you need to just support the newly added attribute. If it is there, based on the cardinality and based on your use case, if the cardinality says mandatory, you need to handle it. If it says optional and now it is on the implementer's choice whether you have the data model for mapping that data or not, then you can map it. It is on you. That is what can happen in normative. Only addition of new elements can happen. Nothing else. Any questions? What is FHIR Maturity Model? Numbers. You can read the description. It is totally theoretical. It will just say key. It should be implemented in 5 applications, 10 applications, and then +1, +1. It is all theoretical, but by behind the scenes, it is the maturity based on the number of implementation done on the resources. Next one would be reading a specification. Then we will learn how to write a resource. Now let's look into how do we read a specification. One exam question is there. I just scrolled on. I'm pointing it out. One FHIR exam question is, if you have to propose a change in FHIR, for example, even if it is a typo, let's say you find that medicinal product, there is a typo, or you want, can this be enhanced in a different way? Or you want some modification to be done in a specification, how you can request it to FHIR or the HL7, or where Graham Grieve and the team will sit and will take a call whether that change has to be. Every FHIR page you open, every FHIR page you open and you scroll down to the bottom, you will find a link which says propose a change. You can click on it. It will take you to a Jira tool. You can log it. Then it is the CCB team for HL7 or under Graham Grieve who will identify whether your question or the issue reported is valid. Then only they will consider your change. This is where you can propose a change to the FHIR content or the FHIR specification as well. Whether they will accept it or not, that is their call. We cannot comment on that part. They will consider how big is the impact, whether this will be used by other hospitals. Also, it is not that you need it. For example, considering this patient resource, if you see the list of attributes, there is no race attribute which is present. And you are pinging a Graham Grieve. I want to propose a change. I need a race attribute. He will definitely come back that you please go ahead and use extensions. And it does not mean that for one implementation, he will make this change. He will evaluate the impact and the CCB team will approve or reject that bug. Now let's consider how do we rate a specification. Interesting part is we will again take our patient resource. Over here, we will look into the above header later. If you open any resource, it is also on the same lines when we were going to the Kerasitech site. If you open any trigger event A, D, TAOL1, or if you open I will just change the trigger event to something else. Why I am not able to click back. Segment. Trigger events. Now it came. If you open any, just like how we understood reading a one trigger event, if you open any other trigger event, let's consider whatever it came. Let's consider another trigger event. What difference do you see if you have to read this specification? It is the same. Some segment IDs. It might be a new segment for you, but if you know how to read a specification, it is on the same lines. It is a segment. This is a segment. This is a segment. This is a segment. Some cardinality is associated to the segment, some rate probability repeatability. And if you click on a segment, let's use QRD. You will find some fields, some data constraints, some data type is repeat, cardinality, then the repeatability. And if you open the data type, it will tell you whether it's primitive or complex. Now on the same lines, I'll close the unwanted tabs. On the same lines, it is the same concept. If you know how to read one specification, you can work on any specification. Only thing is, you should know which resource to work on. That is why I gave you first assignment of HL7V2, identifying the correct resources, identifying the correct trigger events. Now you need to map the patient demographics into FHIR. How do you do it? You identified that the resource name is patient. How do you identify that this is the correct resource? There are a couple of things you need to definitely identify that this is the correct resource for you. One theoretical part is you need to read this part and this part. Here it says I need to demographics and the other administrative information about the individual or animal receiving care or healthcare related services. That is one part. But reading this part, does this tell you that? Can I map name? Can I map patient gender? Can I map race of a patient? For that, you need to just scroll down. If you scroll down a bit, you will find a specification. Yesterday we discussed FHIR has given specification in different formats. For functional people, the specification is written in a tabular format. Even I like reading a tabular format. If you are more of a technical folk, you can go to a Euler diagram. You can view the same specification in what is there in the tabular format. You can see the same one in the XL format. You can see the same specification in the JSON format. In the turtle format, we will talk about this diff and all. All will tell you it is a structure. Under structure, you will have UML. It is the kernel. Then there is a JSON format. There is a turtle format. Then doc. This is the changes done. Now we will talk about one more concept which I usually talk when I teach how to write a resource. But as I have spoken 3 terms, I will tell you FHIR resources can be written in 3 languages. What are all? In this case, languages can be a format. What all are the 3 formats? Accepts XMR, accepts JSON, FHIR accepts turtle. Now the question can be, what is turtle? It is another format where you can define a resource. But what to define? It is again the specification. XML or JSON. It is a standard, a normal standard adopted by FHIR to represent the data model which is represented in the grid. We will learn how to read-write XML or JSON. That is the application. But most of the implementation works using JSON. The application, the person who is building the application, they prefer accepting the data in the JSON format because the reading and passing the JSON format is pretty easy than XML format because XML requires a schema, requires a XD file. Based on that SD file, you need to pass the data. That is where most of the requests which you will see. Even if I am performing a request for you in the Postman, it will be in the JSON format, but I will showcase how it can work in XM also. Now going back to how to read a specification. Over here, I will go to the structure. This is a patient resource. The top level will tell you what is the name of the resource. There are different flags given to each attribute. We will talk about a flag. There can be a flag. There cannot be a flag. We will talk about what all these flags means. Cardinality. This is the same concept we learn in HL7V2. If we look into this cardinality column, is clear to us now. Now let's look into what is this patient. What all are listed here. This is the name of the resource. Any specification you open at the top level, it will tell you what is the name of the resource. Flag is telling you what is the maturity model. In this case for patient, this is the maturity model mentioned. These flags have different meaning. We will talk about it. Now, these are the list of attributes, just like within a segment. If you remember MS, H or PID, there are fields defined. Over here, within a resource, there are, people call it attributes or elements. There are only two terms which I have heard. These are the attributes which are defined for the patient resource. Just like in PID segment, it is the fields which are defined for the specification for the PID segment. These are the list of attributes defined. Patient can hold identifier. What is identifier? We will learn about it. There is active. What is this active? A small description is also given, but sometimes it is not easy to interpret this information. For example, an identifier for a patient. Now, what is this active? It says whether the patient record is in active use or not. Any guesses when the record can be marked as inactive? When the patient is diseased. Perfect. Perfect. Or the other way around. When we found one implementation, it was a very custom implementation we did. The hospital told us that. Can you mark the patient resource as inactive if there is no patient visit happening from last 5 years? That is another case. They don't want that patient record to be marked as inactive, but basic idea is whenever I feel the patient is diseased. Diseased means patient is dead. Then the patient record is marked as inactive. Now this is name. This is telecom, gender, birth, date, diseased. Now there is something known as diseased X. Over here the round. The square bracket X means an option. Now considering what this means. Wherever you find this X, here there is an attribute. I will just mark it, some attribute this, because this can happen to any attribute. Here you are seeing it for diseased. Here you are seeing it for multiple birth. What this X means? This X means that this is an optional. This is an option for the data type. Now, what is that option for the data type available? What FHIR says is they have given you two options. Whether you want to use diseased as Boolean. That means the end application will be receiving a true or a false based on the update for the patient diseased. Or the end application is expecting a date time. A date time when the patient is diseased. It is either of them. You cannot use both. Option is either of them. You cannot use both. I am repeating it again. You cannot use both. It is either of them. Now anybody who will tell me, who will decide that whether a Boolean should be? Let's consider. We are doing an implementation. There is a source application. There is a destination application working on FHIR. On what basis? We will decide whether we need to pick Boolean or date time. There are two fields. One in this is HFE2. I hope you still remember. This is a field in PID segment. 29 says. Let me show you one example. I'll just randomly create one thing. Let's consider this is. I am at the 29th field. It says the patient is diseased. 29 says date and time. I would add some 23. Is 7:24. What time it is? Is morning 0.46. And some seconds it is. I will say 23 seconds. This is the time when the patient died. Now the next thing is identity indicator. I think this will hold your yes or no, true or false something. So now I will add. Patient is, that means yes. Correct. This is how you will receive some data from your source application. Now people can ask. This is message. Everything is there. I am just considering PID segment. If you receive something like this, you guys have to think. On what basis? You will decide. Now you have a date time also. You have a boolean also. Y will tell you. It is date time will tell you what time he died. Now on what criteria? You will choose boolean or date time. A very basic question. On what basis? This depends upon the specification of the end application. What is end application? Target application will be expecting either of the format. It will either accept true or false. It will either accept a date time when the patient died. You need to know the specification of the end application. Based on that, you need to map the data from the incoming SEM. Now this is the address. Some address of the marital status. Some marital status. Multiple births. Now it is also on the same lines. Whether you considering twins were born or triplets were born, you can just say the end application can expect whether you are twins or triplets or more than one birth at a either the answer will be yes or then in that case it will be true or false. Multiple birth integer. Either the application is expect tell me the sequence. Whether you were the first one to born, second one to born, third one, fourth one, fifth one. What was your sequence number? Where you were born. This is the attachment data type. This is another flag. We will talk about it. Contact. Some contact. With respect to you. Your communication. What is your preferred language for communication? What you want to use? General practitioner. It is reference to the practitioner who has. It is a primary care provider. Actually, whom you want to talk. This is link. We will talk about link in some time. Because these are reference data types. This topic. 2 days later, we will talk about this thing. This is basic. This is basic. These are the list of attributes. Some cardinality. And we will talk about the data type. Some description. A very basic description about what that attribute actually means. The flags concept. A very interesting concept. A lot of question comes in the FHIR exam on these flags. What are the flags? Are there more flags? How can I rate more about this flag? Are there examples given? Let's look into it. The first flag. The patient resource. If you open, you find some sort of these flags. We will learn about these flags. The first flag. Summary flag. What FHIR says. If you see the patient resource. Everything. Even a single attribute. Mandatory. Can you see? I am just scrolling from top to bottom. Even a single attribute. Mandate. This is mandatory only if you opt for link attribute. But link is also optional. What FHIR says is, FHIR says, they think, in this case, there is org and the FHIR community who have created the standard. They think, wherever you find a summation, those are the elements which are required. These are not required, which should be the part of a resource. When you are building that resource, do you have to mandatorily use it? Answer is no. If you don't have the data, don't use it. But it is good if you populate, identify. If you populate, tell us. Wherever you will find the summation symbol, the meaning of this submission symbol, it's a attribute with things should be available with the resource when you are this resource. Interesting. Before I to the next, I give you everything as optional. Make sure when you are transmitting the information application to the in data, the context of the data should be that it should make sense to the end application. It actually talking about how do we patient resource. You just have resource as patient, which will the application, the data is coming. Functional perspective with identifying patient because patient as which set application with everything optional. Please the attribute optional attribute is with specification which telling option popular resource constraints with root contain something reading did what whether should contact did take we right. This even if there is no I present in the specification, you will find this box as blank. If there is a box, if there is a specification with the attribute I, you will find that constraint written. Over here, it was written for patient resource and it is for contact attribute. I will go back above. It is written for contact which is I. Now, what is that rule? It is the same thing which is written here, but I still didn't understood. They have given algorithm in the functional English manner. Over here it says name should exist. What is this name? Here it says under contact either. This name should be present. You need to either populate it is either. Or now, the next is telecom should exist. Within contact either name or telecom. or it says the address should be there or organization should be there. Address or organization. It is either of them. You can populate either of them. You can populate either of them, whichever you feel is correct for you. The next flag, interesting one. I just copied a sample resource from the examples given. From the example, I will talk about examples. I have just copied one order. This is the order message, and if you can see, the order is a CT chest scan. It is a CT scan which will be done on a patient. Let me do one more thing. I will just copy this and I will. Here, what I will do is I will add one more. I will just say MI scan. I'm not changing the codes. That is secondary. I will just to tell you what is the context here. Considering there is one more status rate. What I have done is I have two orders. Now considering this diagram, there is a hospital information system where the doctor, this is the integration layer. And this is your laboratory. In this case, it is a radiology department because it is a scan. Let's consider hospital placed. When I say hospital, it is a provider who placed, let's say, order for a patient. Now what happened was, let's consider the first order which was placed is the MRI scan. The doctor wanted a MRI scan to be done on a patient. Sorry, the CT scan to be done on a patient, but by mistake, he sent order for a patient which says MRI scan. Now what this end application is doing? Let me just design one end application. This is your end application. This is the MN of the patient. This is the name of the patient. And this is only talking about what is the order placed for the patient over here. It will talk about MRI. You are with me here till now. Correct. This is a UI which radiologist will see, and he will see that there is something known as name. There is some known as MRN and there is a MRI scan. Now considering another order which is correct order placed for a patient. There is another name, same MMRN, and there is a CT scan which is placed onto the patient. And this order is correct order. This was incorrectly placed. Now the context over here is there is a flag. Let's go back to the flag. Now there is a flag which says question mark exclamation. Let's go back to Infosys notes. Question mark exclamation. What it means is this flag has a modifying property. Now what it actually means. Considering the paint diagram, what I have created, this was wrongly placed. But the end application, the radiologist, what he is using, he is only displaying the data is already there in the CDR. It says entered in error. But the UI what is built, it only shows the name of the patient. It shows the MRN of the patient and it shows the order which is placed for that patient. In this case, it is MRI and CT scan. But now, when the patient will go to the radiologist or the radiology department, the radiologist will perform two orders. One is MRI, another one is CT scan, but the expected one is only CT scan. What it actually means is if there is an attribute which has modifying property, end application should always consume and should display on the screen. What it means is now, if they have also marked the status here, then the radiologist would have not opted or not performed this test, and it would have only done CT scan. And that is where the modifying flag comes into picture, that what FHIR says is it is good to populate. Modifying flag. Again, it is optional. It is your wish. You can populate, you cannot populate. Over here it is mandatory. You need to populate. Considering it is optional, and you populate the attribute which is having modifying property with this flag. Now an application should always consume and utilize it in their application because that attribute has a modifying property. Did you understood with this example? Patient went to the doctor. Now, once the patient went to the doctor, patient tells the condition. These are my conditions that I have problems. Doctor will now, primary care provider will order a test. In this case, I am marking one test. Let's consider he wanted to order a CT scan. By mistake, he sent MRI scan. He sent the MRI scan. And then he found I sent it wrong. He ordered MRI scan. And then the doctor realized that I have entered a wrong order for a patient. And then he updated the order. But very important part, why I am focusing on this one. End application which is built, they are only displaying 3 columns from the entire payload. One is name. This is a vague example I am giving you. This is just to tell you what is that flag, name, medical record number, and what is that scan. This is a scan which is ordered. They will never know whether the scan was ever updated by the doctor. They are only picking the 3 attributes. Now, even considering now the doctor has corrected it to the CT scan. Now the doctor has corrected to the CT scan. This will create another row. What radiologist will see? There are 2 tests which are ordered by the doctor. One is this, one is this. This is placed by mistake, but as the end application who is built on top of the CDR. I think I have not explained what is the CDR. We will talk about CDR. This application is working on top of CDR and on the UA. They have only created or only populated 3 attributes from the entire payload what the source application is sending. What it means is if the end application is sending you a data model where the status has a question mark exclamation and it has modifying property, end application should consume it. What it means is if end application, considering this end application, a new one, this is the name, this is medical record number, status and test, that then for initially it will be marked as active because the doctor sent it correctly. Then the doctor found it is sent it incorrectly. He will send it. Enter it in error. This might be marked as inactive or entered in error. Then the doctor sent CT scan. Then when the patient will go to the radiologist, he will only find this is the only correct test which he has to perform. Then he will only perform a CT scan for the patient rather than performing an order which was sent by mistake because the ended was the mistake of end application that they are not showcasing the entire data set. More probably the data who has the modifying property. Now was I clear? As I have already told you, FHIR resources can be written in XML or JSON or Turtle. I have no idea how to work with Turtle. Let me show you how it looks. I can just give you a heads up of how it looks, but I have never built and there is no implementation done on Turtle. As per my experience, there is no implementation done on Turtle. This is R4 if I go to patient resource. What FHIR has done is just to kickstart, just for you or new learners to kickstart. What they have done is they have given you examples. What that example means, they have given some JSON structures, XML structures and turtle structures based on the specification. What is written here? Now the important part is whether they have populated all the attributes. Answer is definitely no. They have populated some of the attributes. For example, they are saying general person, example. If you want to see how the resource will look like in XML, the resource will look something like this in the XML format. I can teach you XML also. Preferred one would be the JSON. This is how it will look in the JSON format. This is your JSON. Because it is easy to read and Endent application does not need a schema to pass it. This is how the JSON looks like. If you want to see how Turtle looks like it's a dot operated format. Here, if you see this is they will declare, they will somewhere declare that it is a patient resource. It is a patient resource and now within patient it is a dot operator. Identifier is attribute. Now all of this is the index of 0, which means identifier is repeating. Index of 0, they are using uses attribute. What value they are using? What is the type they are using? Then there is a codable concept. This is how Turtle looks like. I will not teach you Turtle because my experience in Turtle is not that great. And I have not done any implementation in Turtle also. I will teach you XML or JSON. Most of the examples which I will be teaching you will be in the JSON format. That is where what we are going to do over here is let's do. Where is that? Notepad plus. Writing a JSON object. Now it is not a FHIR concept to writing JSON or writing XML or reading JSON or reading XML. FHIR has adopted it as a data model. Let's try to learn how do we write a JSON. Before we write it, there are a couple of concepts within JSON. The concept is something like this. Anybody who has worked on XML or JSON can tell me what is this. If we are using, it is a technical part. If we are using a square bracket, in technical term, what it actually means? It is array. And if we are using a flower bracket, what it actually means? It is an object. Now considering the last one, it would be straightforward. What it would mean? It is an array of objects. Beautiful. Now this same concept applies on FHIR also. Before we go in writing the specification from looking into the patient resource, let's just try to create a employee data. Two things the resource can. I think we can use the new plugin language J for JSON. Your FHIR resource. Or let's talk about JSON. Your JSON can start with the object. We'll talk about two things. Your JSON can start with the object. When I say object, let me just copy these three things here. Your JSON can start with an object. Over here, I have created an object. Let's create an employee object. What employee object can hold employee name? Employee ID, employee department. We'll use three or four attributes. Let's consider this is an employee object. What I am using is, I am using a name. We'll use that first as ID. Let's say it is Infosys. I am just using Info23. And now considering it can be a flat file. When I say flat file, one more point just to add before this. JSON language and for none. JSON is a key value pair. JSON is a key value pair. When I say JSON is a key value pair, what it means is there is a key. Key is always in double quotes. Value depends on the data type. Value depends on the data type. Now key is separated by value using a colon. This is the base concept. Now let's look into how we implement the same thing here. ID I have written, it's a string. If it is of string data type value, if value is string, then you have to put it into double quotes. That is why I have added double quotes here. Now considering if it is integer you can directly write into double quotes or without double quotes. That depends upon what is the end application expecting. Now let's consider age of the employee. Let's consider employee is 30. You can either put it in double quotes. That will be marked as string. Then end application should be also expecting it as a string. Now if you are marking it as 30, that means it is an integer. Now considering name. What we can do is we can write it as an object. You can definitely. There are ways to write. You can say Sahil, then test something. This is the first name, space, last name. But there is a way you can define the name in a better sequence. You can create name also as an object. Once you create name as an object, you can tell this is my first name. You can just use over here. I am saying Joe. Last name, then I will say do here. Now I will take another example, considering the telecom. A person can have more than 2 numbers. Then what you can use? Let's say, consider the key is telecom. Then, as I said, it is repeating, a person can have more than one telecom. It is array. There are 2 ways to write array. You can directly tell within this number that this is 2, 3, 5, 6. This is my first phone number. This is my second phone number. This is how you will tell the application that this is the first phone number or second phone number. But if you want to briefly define, and one more point, key cannot repeat within a JSON object. If you want to write another telecom object here, that is not possible. Now I am just commenting it. This is a comment now. If you consider this telecom, if you have to write it in a better way, you can create this telecom as an object. If you create this telecom as an object, you can use this is my home phone, and then you can put a value, some value. You can put this is my number, and then if you just repeat it, this is the repetition. This is the array of objects what we are doing. You can mention this is my office phone and my phone number is the 12334. Any questions? How did we write this? Or any questions on this? And one more point now. This is for one employee. Now, if this has to repeat for another employee and it needs to be an array of objects, what you need to do is, this is an object. You can start it with the square bracket, end it with the square bracket, put a comma here and repeat this entire object for n number of employees. This is now a new employee, 34, age is 31, name is Do1, something and phone numbers you can change definitely. And this is how an array of objects, normal array is built up in JSON. This is nothing to do with FHIR. This is basics of JSON. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.